Hello everyone, Freemantle here with an installment of the Liberal Lexicon. This time another 4 terms or phrases and my analyses of them, namely better together, extreme, affirmative action, and fair trade. Better together, the Liberal sometimes says. Now, nobody needs a Liberal to point out to them that when they go well, human relationships are one of the deepest joys in life. If that's all the Liberal had to say when he talks about better together, he'd have nothing to say, nothing distinctive. What he means is that it's good to be with people regardless of who everybody is and what they're doing. What counts most for him is what I call bare being together with other people. That is, just being together with them. But I suggest that's not as good as being with the right people, and that it works that way for the Liberal too. If we're better together, then we're even better if we're tightly together, warmly together, supportively together. Imagine a welfare state society the size of a city, where everybody is a Liberal. This would be a more comfortable place for a Liberal because of its absence of individualism. It would be more stable, too, since it wouldn't be necessary to install coercive social arrangements in order to control dissidents. We could call this city an enclave, a liberal enclave. It could be physical, but it could also be virtual, that is, communication, relationships among like-minded people. The Liberal overlooks the superiority of an enclave compared to a society that is liberal but coercive. I think this is because he habitually thinks in terms of transforming current society rather than creating a new one. Coercion is an expected part of a society on the way to full collectivism, as America is. And it's easy to miss the even more heartwarming prospects for a Liberal, for a tailor-made social order in which all are like-minded and liberal, the liberal enclave. In any event, the Liberal should be absolutely clear that in a free society, he's free to be a collectivist, where he's joined by like-minded people. Most people in a free society would probably celebrate the Western hero who stands against the town, but it should be realized that the Liberal is the person who wants to be part of the town. And the point needs to be made that a free society accommodates both the individual and the town, that is the group, by according a scope of autonomy to each. Extreme. Liberals are fond of the word. I heard somewhere that they brought it into the political scene when they were opposing Barry Goldwater's presidential run in 1964. It continues to be a popular term for principled opposition to liberal programs or policies. Liberals are never extreme. A liberal who wants to see fundamental change in America is bold, imaginative, and daring. Just ask any liberal. 3. Affirmative action. The Liberal wants us to believe that affirmative action is not a way in which people get ahead only because of race, ethnicity, gender, or some other characteristic irrelevant to performance. The picture we're to have is that affirmative action programs reach into the hopper, they draw out all the people who qualify by performance or merit standards, and of those, the people who have the right non-performance characteristics, gender or whatever, get the preferential treatment. But if the Liberal talks long enough, he may make a statement that shows us that affirmative action doesn't work that way. I once listened to a panel discussion on affirmative action in which one of the panelists was a high official in the Federal Education Department under President Bill Clinton. She said at one point about the Education Department's outreach efforts, "Sometimes when you reach out, you have to extend the idea of qualified." She meant adjusting qualifications so they'll fit the favored people. From this we can draw either or both of 2 conclusions. 1, the favored people are unqualified by performance or merit standards. Now, if the performance or merit standards are wrong, and the Liberals are right, whatever they are, he could attack the performance and merit standards directly, show them to be mistaken, prove his standards are the right ones, and no one could rationally complain if his standards happen to be partial to his favored people. From a rational point of view, he wouldn't need affirmative action. 2, when qualifications are adjusted as necessary so they'll fit the Liberals' favored people, we can conclude that performance and merit are unimportant or flatly irrelevant in affirmative action. If qualifications extend and bend and stretch so that the favored people always qualify, the word qualified only means having whatever characteristics they have. But as these characteristics aren't based on performance or merit, or affirmative action wouldn't be necessary, the person must qualify simply on his non-performance characteristics. Quotas? The liberal says affirmative action doesn't require them. He says he doesn't want them. This is true and false. The concept of preferential treatment for people who are 15 feet tall does not entail that a certain number of people 15 feet tall are to get the favored treatment. In that way, affirmative action does not require quotas, true. But affirmative action is not strictly voluntary. It is enforced on employers and others. Where it's enforced, the enforcer needs to be able to tell whether it's being practiced. In the case of employer Egbert, the purpose of affirmative action is to increase or maintain the number of 15 feet tall people on Egbert's payroll. The most direct way of ascertaining that is to look at the numbers. Indeed, how else could you do it? In Egbert's business, how many 15 feet tall people occupy the various positions? The enforcer looks to see whether the numbers are up, down, or steady. And Egbert better be complying with the required number of 15 feet tall people on board. The liberal is right that the concept of affirmative action, that is, preferential treatment based on race or other non-performance characteristics, does not require quotas. What he doesn't say plainly is that quotas almost always are required by the enforcement of affirmative action. If he wants affirmative action, he'll want quotas where necessary to carry it out. Fourth term, fair trade. My postman recently delivered an ad circular from a local supermarket. The ad told me that this month I could choose products from brands committed to fair trade practices. The ad gave me 4 reasons to choose fair trade items. I would be supporting 1, no child, forced, or exploited labor. 2, workplace non-discrimination, gender equity, and freedom of association. 3, safe working conditions and reasonable work hours. And 4, environmental sustainability. Well, that's a pretty vague rundown on what fair trade is. I'd be supporting freedom of association. Well, the liberal is hardly in favor of that. If people want to exclude people, the liberal believes should be included. I'd be boosting non-discrimination and gender equity. Pretty rubbery terms. What do they mean except what the liberal wants them to mean in a given case? No forced labor and safe working conditions. What do those have to do with the fairness in fair trade? What does the phrase reasonable work hours mean, and how does that connect with fairness? We don't have a very clear idea here of what fair trade is. Well, suppose we turn things around and try to understand what fair trade is by asking what it's different from. And the answer, of course, is free trade. If it's fair trade, it's not free trade. If it's free trade, it's not fair trade. It's unfair trade. Free markets are unfair markets. Capitalism is unfair. Does this progression sound familiar? And of course, fair is something we ought to be. A good person is a fair person. He's fair in his dealings with other people. He's fair when he buys. He chooses fair trade products and not free trade products. I submit to you that the purpose of talking about fair trade, whatever other purpose it may also serve, is to condemn capitalism and free markets for being unfair. The takeaway from today's video. The liberal may be better together with other people, but he'd be even better with people who share his values. The word extreme is a liberal way of denigrating principled opposition to his values, political policies, and programs. Affirmative action and its quota-based enforcement reward people because they are favored by the liberal, not because of their merit. And the phrase fair trade makes the liberal point that free markets are unfair. Thank you for listening.